Yo, what's up? In this video, I'm gonna give you the top five greatest point guards of all time. Now, like I said in the preview video, that I'm gonna break down each position of a basketball team. 1 through 5, and I'm gonna give you who I think is the greatest said position players of all time. And at the end of the series, I'm gonna give you my top 10. I'm gonna do, 1 through 5. I'm gonna do role players, and I might think of something else like along the way, such as the top 5 clutch players of all time. Now, there isn't a set in stone top 5 list or top whatever list. It all based on this opinion. They have different criteria to determine who is the greatest on their list. Like me, I just go by the players that I've seen played. Others may do that, and also others may do research to determine that they, live longer than I live, so they could. There are more people. It's a larger pool of the top players they could pick. Some you research, some look back at old games. No method is wrong or right. you know, my top 5 or top whatever may be different than everybody's top 5. They still don't make my top 5 wrong or dumb or whatever. So, um, top 5 greatest point guards. Now, number 5, I put Jason Kidd as the fifth greatest point guard of all time. Now, I've been watching Jason Kidd since he started in the league. With Dallas. He won the Rookie of the Year with Grant Hill, and he was only with Dallas for a little bit. And I heard there was some kind of rumors with Jim Jackson and a woman, but whatever. And he went to Phoenix. That's when he really shined. Well, he was shining a little bit with Dallas, but it wasn't. He wasn't with the team that long. He started going to All Star games, leading the team in assists, going to playoffs, etc., etc. You know, he is a triple double walking. You know, Probably not now because he 40. You might well say he's almost 40. But in his prime, he was great. He could pass, he could get rebounds, he could, he's not a scorer. He's like a pure point guard. One of the last pure point guards left to me. There's still some like Chris Paul, and I put Rondo in there, but they starting to shift towards scoring point guards. Um, he did his tenure with Phoenix. He went to a couple of All Star games. Then he got traded to the Nets. The Nets were horrible. Everybody knew that before he got there, and he turned that team into a championship contender. Now, granted, the East wasn't as strong as it is now, but that still doesn't take away how great he was with the Nets with Van Horn and who else was on that team? Kenyon Martin, Richard Jefferson, or whatnot. They made it to the finals twice. Unfortunately, they ran into Shaq and Kobe and the Lakers and got swept. Then they went again. They won 2 games, I believe, and they lost to the Spurs. Now his first year with his first full year with the Nets or whatever, when they went to the finals. Now I had him winning the MVP. He should have won the MVP this year, but they gave it to Tim Duncan. Which was a good candidate, but they were the New Jersey Nets, and the Nets were garbage. He turned the team around, and he spent most of his career there. You know, Getting triple doubles. I think he the current leader of triple doubles among active players. Don't quote me on that. And he probably like in the top five or the top three in triple doubles of all time. You know, he's a great player. Then after the Nets, he went back to the team where he got drafted to Dallas. At that point, I thought he was pretty much done, but he's still putting up numbers, not like he was, but he's still playing good. During that time, he was with the All Star team. They won gold, the Redeem team, as most people call it, and he won a title. That was the only thing that, in my opinion, that was the only thing that was missing out of his career, the title, and he was among Dirk and Jason Terry and Tyson Chandler. I I think I did video saying that I didn't think Dallas was gonna beat the Miami Heat. I wanted them to win, but I wanted another team to go and beat the Heat. But I guess I was wrong. Jason Kidd didn't put up great numbers because he was like 35, 36 or something at that time. That was expected, but he's still going though. And after Dallas, he signed. I thought he was done pretty much after he won that title, but he went on to New York, and that's where he currently at. He gets some playing time, whatnot, but he clearly ain't the point guard like he was. A real diverse point guard, one of the greatest, and to me, he was the greatest point guard in the last 15 years. You know, this current era or whatever, the late 90s to you know, past his prime, he was like the best point guard to me. So for that alone, he's number five. Now, number four is Gary Payton. Now, Gary Payton, to me and probably to others, the greatest defensive point guard ever. Where at least in my opinion he is. He spent a majority of his career with the Seattle SuperSonics. Um, Led the team to the finals. They ran into the 72 win Jordan team. Um, they went to the playoffs many times in Seattle. Him and Kemp or whatever. Was the court general, and he also got the nickname the Glove based on his defense and stealing ability. He went to many defensive um first team. I think he won defensive player of the year. Um, he was just flat out great. And then he talked trash, and that also made it interesting. Cause he back it up for the most part. Then he went to the he left through a trade. I think for Ray Allen. He left for Ray Allen, and I'm just talking on top of my head. He was there for just a cup of coffee. Then he went to the LA Lakers. Now, he was a part of that team with Malone, Kobe, and Shaq. They was the championship favorites. Now, they made it to the championship, but they ran into my Pistons, and a lot of people consider that an upset, due to the on paper, but Detroit was one of the best defensive teams ever, especially for that single year and for the couple of years or whatever. Gary Payton, um, greatest defensive point guard I ever seen. Um, tough. He could score. He could get. He's not a assist guy like Kidd or others, but he got the job done. And after the Lakers, he went to the Celtics for a minute, and then he went to the Miami Heat, where of course, at that time he wasn't a player like he was in the past, but he contributed a lot in Miami, and his contribution ultimately led to a championship in 2006 with Wade, and he hit clutch shots in the playoffs. He did his part or whatever, so he rightfully earned that ring. Years and years of chasing the ring, he finally got it. So after that, he was pretty much done. I think he played like the next year, and he was done. You know, that's cap out a great career. I think he going in the Hall of Fame this year. I think so. Rightfully earned. You know, um, that pretty much it. He was great. He one of my favorites. I used to love playing choosing the Seattle Supersonics on NBA Jams. That's how good that's how much I like Gary Payton, the glove or whatever. And I think he doing something with NBA TV because I don't have it. But when I watch it over some other people's house, he be on there. So one of the greatest of all time, deservingly a Hall of Famer. So that is my number four, Gary Payton. Now number three, Isaiah Thomas. Now Isaiah Thomas is the reason why I'm a Detroit Pistons fan. Now, like I said, I started really watching basketball like in the late '80s, early '90s, etc. I was still a kid, so I don't remember it vividly, but I do remember that Isaiah Thomas was one of the greatest point guards at that time. You know, he wasn't. He was like 6 feet or something. He was little, but he brought it. His stature was small, but he played like he was 7 feet tall. Him and Joe Dumars, which also one of my favorite players. They won the title. Now I'm just going by the time I started watching it. Um, so they were part of the Bad Boys. Everybody know the story between him and the Bulls and the Celtics, the Lakers or whatever. They were one of the dominant teams. They got kind of overlooked somewhat due to Boston success, but they still was in the hunt and they finally won not one but two back to back. But unfortunately, they ran into the Bulls team and got swept. Now, the only knock I got against Isaiah Thomas is the way he handled that once the Bulls beat him. Not acknowledging the man, shaking the man's hand. They just walked off the court. You look on YouTube, you'll see the scene or whatever. I didn't like that at all. Now if Jordan them when they lose, they give you props. You should give them props, but that shouldn't take away from his play. Multiple time All Star, um, first team. He was great in college in Indiana. What else I could say that you know just look it up. You'll see how great Isaiah Thomas is. And I wish he was a part of the Dream Team in 1992, but it was a conflict. Michael Jordan thing. They had a documentary about that. Um, Not too long ago, stating that I never knew it was because of Jordan. It was just kind of crazy he wasn't on the team, being Isaiah one of the greatest point guards ever. Clutch play in playoffs, always in the championship hunt. Like I said, around the time I started watching it or whatever, he played a couple more years. He retired like in the mid '90s, close to the mid '90s. So I just got that little time frame. They was going to the playoffs, and but they wasn't like they was in the '80s. But nevertheless, one of the greatest point guards of all time. He played defense. He could score. He could put the team on his back. Great player. Now, number two is John Stockton. Now, to me, John Stockton is the greatest point guard of his era. Like, um, throughout the whole '90s or whatever, John Stockton was the man to me. Now, unfortunately, they didn't win the championship. That's the only knock that he have in my eyes. But other than that, great player. You know, Steal, play defense, assist man. People compare him to uh, Steve Nash, but he is nowhere near Steve Nash. Okay, he played defense. You know, Steve Nash lacked defense, and I guess because they stature, I guess, and assists, but he's nowhere. Steve Nash ain't nowhere in John Stockton league to me. You know, you everybody who watched basketball through the '90s, they know the duo of John Stockton and Karl Malone, the pick and roll. You know, and the funny thing is, when they went to the finals, the last time Jordan last year, or before he came back with the Wizards, his last year in '98, I actually wanted the Jazz to win. You know, but Jordan and the Bulls were just too much for him. So he played a couple more years after that. Then once Malone left, he pretty much retired after that. Once Malone went to L.A., one of the greatest players ever. Um, it's a debate by it's a people still have a debate if he the greatest point guard of all time or whatnot. But I don't put him as number one because he didn't win the championship. Now, to me, y'all see my videos or whatever. I put players who win titles, you know, up there. But John Stockton to me was so good. He deserved to be the second. The third, fourth, and fifth spot wasn't as pure of a point guard as John Stockton to me. So he could steal. Think he then he led the then he have the overall steals. I don't have the stuff in front of me, but and assists. I know he was the assist leader or whatever. But what can you say? He would have. uh, but the man great. He played. You see him every game. He wasn't hardly injured. The man was good. He came through. He played. He tried his hardest, but I'm just sad that he didn't win the championship. At least one. But hey, um, so he the second greatest point guard to me. Now number one is Magic Johnson. Now, like I said earlier, I started remembering games and stuff like in the late '90s, in the late not '90s, late '80s or whatever. So Magic Johnson, I only had a small little window to see Magic Johnson. Now, when he went to the finals twice, well, three times really. They lost against Detroit. I could remember that, and Magic Johnson with playing the Bulls. What can I say that everybody else did say? A lot of people have Magic Johnson number one. So that me putting Magic Johnson number one really a reach. The man great. The man was pretty much oversized to play point guard. He was LeBron James height. Where he was 6'8", 6'9", and he playing the point guard. The man started off winning. Won in college, and next year he won in the championship game. Won the title. Now, now this ain't a reach at all. Magic Johnson was the best player in the '80s, the best point guard in the '80s. The Showtime Lakers with James Worthy, Kareem. He was the man. A lot of people, he wasn't a jump shooter. He was a point guard. He was an oversized point guard. Actually, it was kind of weird how tall he was playing the point guard. But he brought it. He was clutch. He could shoot. He could pass. He won multiple awards. He won multiple titles. You know, he Magic Johnson and Larry Bird are responsible for the NBA today. I think if it wasn't for them and Magic Johnson, the NBA would be in a stone age like it was before them to me. But like I said, I only saw him for a short little window. Then the he did that announcement by HIV or whatnot. Then he came back for a minute, but we all know That was a shell of Magic Johnson, like in the mid '90s or something. I think I don't have the year in front of me, but the man was great. Now that's a guy that you build a team around. That's a all-time franchise player, and also he's a winner. Everywhere he go, he wins. And also, you see him retire. He got multiple businesses. He probably made more money now than he did when he was in the league. So Magic Johnson, great, multiple time champion defense. He could do it now. But that's my top five. Jason Kidd, Gary Payton, um, Isaiah Thomas, John Stockton, and number one Magic Johnson. Now the next video I'm gonna do the top five greatest is the top five greatest shooting guards. So I would like to know what your top five is. You can put it in the description box or whatever. And for honorable mentions, I'm gonna do this too. Honorable mentions: Tony Parker, Nash, Chris Paul. Those are three on top of my head I could think of for honorable mentions. But so with that said, that's it. Like I said, just write down your top five. That's your top five in the description box in the comment section. So with that said, that's it.